Hate symbols are a venomous, archaic survivor of tribalism, and here's why we shouldn't ban them. A hate symbol in plain view is about as harmful as a wet paper towel, and in no way should its depiction warrant criminal persecution. And yet, unsurprisingly enough, there are those who would have you think that hate symbols are sharpened knives with intent to kill. Or at least that's what this shit tells me. Recently, the Australian state of Victoria has become one of the first communities internationally to ban the swastika, citing its role in inciting anti-Semitism and hate. Germany's hate speech precedent has finally taken root in the wider world. But for what benefit? Once in effect, anyone who intentionally displays the Nazi symbol in public faces penalties of up to $22,000. While the swastika may as well be the flag of anti-Semitism, I get the feeling that the author often isn't a skinhead. Look at a middle schooler's exercise book or a high school bathroom, and you'll see that either Australia has a detrimental Nazi problem, or, and in all likelihood, swastikas are a low-effort expression of teenage angst. By banning the swastika, we criminalize harmless personal expression for the majority in order to prevent the political expression of a very slim minority. You might say, but the police aren't going to enforce this law when the person drawing the hate symbols is just fucking around. If that were true, the law would be completely undermined by the fact that real Nazis can hide behind a shield of satire when confronted with the swastika they've drawn. Also, the use of a swastika for political expression is hardly the mark of white nationalism. The only time I've ever seen it used for a political statement in the past was when the left wing drew it on campaign posters of their political opponents, likening them to fellow politician Adolf Hitler. The fact that the swastika gets the majority of its use today from juveniles having a laugh, and people who use it in a way that further defames the Nazi emblem, tells me that the legislation, for all of its sanctimony, will at best decrease religious persecution by a microscopic margin, and at worst, ironically, censor political statements from progressives. Furthermore, this conversation is polluted by people who, through conventional unintelligence or political brainwashing, refuse to entertain the idea that just because something is taboo by modern standards, doesn't mean it should be banned under threat of legal persecution. To put it into perspective, these are the same people who defend calling right-wing political pundits Nazis, and are fighting so that they will no longer be able to call people Nazis. Just as it were when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in 1974, your political power now too is being removed by laws you advocated for. Even if you guys are cool with having your political expressions sacrificed at the altar of political correctness, what do you seriously think banning a swastika is gonna do to help stop anti-Semitism and hate? Banning hate symbols isn't going to reduce the amount of Nazis, they're just gonna stop using Nazi symbols. Display of Nazi symbols are also not exactly a method extremists use to recruit moderates, so the only logical reason we have for banning them is so that we don't get offended. So, in a sense, what we have now are Nazis that aren't allowed to outwardly demonstrate that they are in fact Nazis, or, to speak plainly, we now have invisible Nazis while doing absolutely nothing to prevent hate groups from proliferating. It's like putting a band-aid over an infected wound so we don't have to look at it, while also not seeking medical attention because it's too much effort. If people hide their hatred, we won't be able to challenge it in the same way as if they just expressed their hatred openly. Also, now we don't know if someone is bigoted or not, as fascists will dilute their opinions to not get cancelled, and those who are moderate conservatives look like fascists who have diluted their opinions to not get cancelled. This leads to well-intentioned conservatives being caught in the crossfire of political battles, which can ironically push them further to the right. If only there was a convenient way for Nazis to identify themselves, like a symbol they could wear. Also, it's scary to think that if I held a bigoted opinion, I'm doomed to hold that opinion forever, because discussion that challenged that viewpoint is banned. And maybe getting rid of that discussion will also make us forget why it was wrong in the first place.
I don't give two shits about you or anybody else or what you think. You're not a part of it and you never will be. You don't think I see what you're trying to do here? You think I'm gonna sit here and smile while some fucking kike tries to fuck my mother? It's never gonna happen, Murray. Fucking forget it. Not on my watch.
Think about all the potential bigots we won't save because we don't want to have our feelings hurt. After all, free speech in the long run has a cleansing effect. No country has more stringent hate speech protections than America, yet in America, hate crimes have a constant downwards trend. You could make the case that most hate crimes result from a lack of a cross-the-aisle discourse. Conversely, the rise of Nazism and similar totalitarian ideologies were preceded by strict hate speech laws. In other words, allowing hate speech reduces hate. But maybe hate speech isn't a valid form of speech. Maybe it's just a weapon used in an ideological battle. And in war, anything is justified, including legal penalty. Or maybe this isn't the best lens to view political discussions through. In 1961, an experiment was conducted. Over the course of 2 weeks, 22 boys were divided into 2 groups. At first, the groups competed against each other for prizes. During the competition phase, researchers recorded a steady increase in intergroup conflict. From an evolutionary perspective, nothing stokes hatred more than competition for limited resources. This competitive vilification can also be seen in our contemporary discussions. Speech isn't without impact. It's hard not to view politics as a team sport where the victor rules all. Under these conditions, anything is justified. Are we, like the kids in the Robbers Cave experiment, destined to hate those we disagree with? Following the initial period of conflict in the Robbers Cave experiment, both groups of boys got to cooperate on a shared goal. Surprisingly, when the 2 groups worked together, group hostility sharply declined. To decrease group conflict, all that was necessary was a shared goal. Maybe we can apply these findings to our approach to political discussion. Instead of looking at speech as a competition for power, we can see it as a cooperative tool for finding the truth. A cynic might object that this frame will leave the empathetic and understanding among us at a disadvantage to predators who use their speech for ulterior motives. While true, the amount of people that use speech for evil is likely a small subset of the population. When you look at your immediate family, friend group, and community, how many of those people are actually using their speech for evil? And how many are just trying to argue for what they think is right? Are we really willing to dispense with the hope of ever-reducing political division, just so that we can prevent those few people from sharing their harmful opinions? Instead of approaching political discussion as a war zone, set an example by thinking of it as a human-wide collaborative project. And maybe then, by reducing hostility, we would see less swastikas anyway. To reiterate, hate symbols are bad. They're reminders of some of the most abhorrent belief systems humanity has ever witnessed. Without the swastika, we unburden ourselves from mindless prejudice, the pain that it incurs, and we protect our political system which, for better or worse, is one that we're all fighting for. But if we want a more tolerant world, we can't build it with reckless government PR stunts and forced complacency. We need to build it with open discussion and empathy.